Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, once again joined by Zepsi. We both do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation, but we don't do these weekly updates in any official capacity. We're just coming to you personally to give you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. Welcome back, Zep.
How's it going, Brandon?
It's going good. We have a lot to cover this week, but as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So, the first thing that I want to touch on is Elon Musk, his plans for Twitter, now, of course, rebranded to X. And the reason why I want to get into this is because it seems like his plans have something to do with cryptocurrency, it has to do with payments. And I'm pretty sure, actually, it's going to have to do with cryptocurrency. So, the impact that he could have on the entire crypto industry, and of course, any network that he decides to build on, that impact could be tremendous. So Elon Musk said he believes it's possible for Twitter, as I said, now rebranded as X, to become the largest financial institution in the world, where app users can wire money to one another effortlessly with one click and earn interest. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be done on Hedera, but I think it's relevant to highlight some of Elon's tweets discussing his thoughts on money and currency. In one tweet, he said, "The thing we call money is just an information system for labor allocation. What actually matters is making goods and providing services. We should look at currencies from an information theory standpoint. Whichever has the least error and latency win." Now, of course, talking low latency and error is speaking Hedera's language. And another Elon tweet was highlighted by ABFT, thanks for the tip, where he said, "For those bad at math, 100x higher transaction volume with 100x lower fees means total fees stays the same. Low fees and high volume are needed to become the currency of Earth." And again, Hedera is the most efficient network on Earth, which is the most important factor in determining network fees. And of course, is the network with the highest sustained transaction volume at the moment and has the most potential to handle more. And finally, we have this tweet from Elon Musk in early 2022, where he actually tweeted out the HBAR symbol. Whether he was messing with us or there was real substance behind it, I have no doubt that he had Hedera in mind. So it's certainly on his radar. And Zeb, the reason why I think that is I think he had 3 tweets that came out that day, and at least one of them, and it might have been both of them, were talking about cryptocurrency. So I'm pretty sure he knows exactly what he's doing when he's putting that out. Now, he does a lot of things jokingly, and I'm sure he knew that that would mess with our community, but there certainly could have been substance to it. So overall, with everything that's coming out around Twitter, around Elon, around X, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think when you look at the X or his idea for X, this sort of global payment infrastructure, that he actually came out saying, he believes that 50% of global payments could be going through X as a network. But I think to really understand it, you have to go back to his first plans for it, which was during the PayPal days. And during the PayPal days, he was, one of the leading figures, one of the leading shareholders. I think he was CEO at the time. And he wanted PayPal to become X. He did everything he could for PayPal to be X and take it down this sort of global payments route that was more of a social thing than what PayPal inevitably become. And he ended up being actually ousted out by Peter Thiel and a few other people. And that really was, I think, a massive slap in the face for him. He's obviously an incredibly intelligent man, incredibly successful man, and an incredibly proud man. And I don't think those three, I think they're all sort of, come hand in hand. So X has always been his birth child, his sort of prized possession, mental possession that he's wanted to build out. And so he wants that innately to be the best network it can be. And like you said, when you look at a ledger like Hedera, he even said, I think the term hash ledger when he was talking to Kathy Wood from Ark. So, again, I think it's on his mind. But there's this strange thing that he often says, which is look towards the most entertaining outcome, which the most entertaining outcome is clearly Doge for a lot of people. There's a sort of paradox of thought between having Doge and wanting X to be the global payment infrastructure, whatever it is he plans out. So whilst I think Doge is there and he likes to sort of push this sort of narrative and have fun there, I don't see if he truly wants this to be the most efficient payment network in the world, how he's going to think about using Doge when you've got something like Hashgraph or whatever it is. So I think, like you said, everything points more towards the most efficient option than the most entertaining outcome. But, we'll see. But alongside that, X so far, he's sort of swinging at the hip. He's updating it by the hip. We've got this new logo that looks very weird. I can't lie. It doesn't feel great. Everything's a bit clunky. There's more sort of bots than ever. A lot needs to happen. I have no doubt that he will make that happen, but a lot needs to happen. And when a lot needs to happen, there is often, clearly there's room for competitors. And there's a clear room for a Web3 competitor in the world of social media. When you look at something that just came out like Threads, you see Mark Zuckerberg's, his sort of empire of data, where even to sign up to Threads, you have to sign up with a photo of your face and all this crazy stuff. That just is going further down a route that we don't believe in. That the world doesn't want more and more of our data going out to the highest bidder. We want to maintain control over that. And so I don't know what the sort of strategy is on the data side for X, but we know with a Web3 network like Hedera, through a company like Galaxy, of course, Galaxy, the greatest Galaxy that's coming out soon, there's a clear competitive element still there. And I think Galaxy definitely has a big foothold to leverage there. So I'm excited to see what Galaxy brings to the table.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And it just seems like in those tweets that I highlighted, his thought process on what currency should be really aligns with what Hedera's strengths are. So we'll see what comes from that. And Zeb, I do want to say that we aren't going to have shark bites this week. Unfortunately, Rob was feeling a little bit under the weather, but I have some good fill-ins. So I did a couple other interviews with Elaine and Shane, and then Mance and Leemon. And since I had some questions from the community that would be better posed to them than Rob potentially, I decided to ask them some of these questions. So the first one I have is going to be a little bit of a teaser because we're going to post the full interviews later on. But the first one I have is going to go to Elaine. So the next one I'm going to hand over to Elaine, and it comes from Coinman, the original HBAR. He said, this is a question for someone at the HBAR Foundation. Why are there no centralized exchanges adopting HUSDC after so many months? And for those that don't know, HUSDC is the Hedera version of the USDC stablecoin. He goes on, surely having decent liquidity and availability of the second largest stablecoin as an HTS token would be good for the ecosystem and encourage folks from other communities to explore Hedera. If there's a reason this objective hasn't been pursued or it's been delayed, I'd like to know the reasoning as for why. Elaine, I think it would be good to respond on USDC specifically, but also on the broader HTS token adoption front.
Yeah, happy to. USDC has always been top of mind since we launched it, or since it was launched, I want to say late 2021. So it's been a while since the asset has been out there. So a couple things about liquidity or asset-specific liquidity. Absolutely agree. Having a centralized exchange to support USDC on Hedera would be phenomenal, right? It would be a really easy way to get into the asset from fiat. Obviously, it being USDC, and given that the majority of on-ramping happens, at least in our ecosystem, through USD, it would be a very kind of easy and simple swap. The challenge, and I'll just be completely frank and open with this, is the challenge is that USDC on Hedera, our liquidity is weak and the market cap is low. Now, that's not for a lack of trying, right? I think most of our grantees, especially our DEXs, when we have conversations with them, if they ask you what the foundation's number one priority is, it would be USDC, right? We're always asking about the USDC liquidity. We're always kind of looking at prioritizing how we can strengthen the USDC asset and kind of its role within our ecosystem. It's a challenge though, right? Because it is a little bit of a chicken and egg, right? So, and this is where I'll tap into my previous role listing tokens on exchanges. But when an exchange looks to list an asset, it really is about the demand and the usability of this asset, right? And so if I am looking at USDC on Hedera, I'm looking at the USDC on Hedera market cap. I'm looking at the volumes of the DEXs and kind of the volume within those pools. I'm looking at which applications are using USDC on Hedera. I'm looking at which wallets are supporting it. I'm looking at the entire kind of on-ramping and off-ramping and then usability or utility ecosystem around that particular asset. Now, I'll be the first to say that ecosystem on Hedera right now is still weak, right? It still is a top priority for us. The problem, though, is one of the key things to increase the strength of a USDC ecosystem is for it to have a centralized exchange listing, right? Because that way you can inject more money into that ecosystem easily. So it is this chicken and egg situation. It is one that we have not deprioritized it. We just have not been as effective in our strategy as we've wanted to, right? It just is a lot harder. I will also say USDC specifically as an asset is considered, is managed a little bit differently within exchanges, right? When you have other exchanges or when you have other assets being listed, you can just kind of pull liquidity from a different open market or, market makers or whatever. You can do that with USDC too, but you also need to manage the inventory within the asset, right? So if I am pulling, or if I'm bringing in USDC ERC20 and I want to pull out USDC like Omni or Tron or I think those are generally the chains that USD multi-chain USDC is supported on, then the exchange actually has to manage the inventory on the back end, right? So they have to have enough USDC in ERC20, they have to have enough USDC on Tron or whatever, right? So the ability to manage that inventory is also quite challenging for exchanges. So I would consider multi-chain USDC being listed on exchanges as more of a exception, where there has been work done on the exchange's backend to support that inventory. I think generally it is more challenging for exchanges to list USDC multi-chain just because that inventory aspect is an additional operational risk, right? Because you can very easily have like a bank run on one USDC and living on one chain. So it is more challenging. More broadly on HTS tokens, it really comes down to a token by token assessment, right? Exchanges care about volume, they care about users. So when they look at an asset, they want to see the ecosystem around that asset, right? And I would say within our ecosystem, we do have really flourishing ecosystems around particular assets, but they're still young. And they're not necessarily at the point where a centralized exchange is going to be like, okay, I'm going to go list this, because there are liquidity and there are kind of inventory risks that exchanges do need to kind of take into consideration. So for me, the best way to get to that end goal of having more Hedera tokens listed on exchanges is to continue to do what we're doing right now, which is to look internally and to grow the existing Hedera ecosystem, right? The more vibrant, the more robust, the more liquid, the more users that we have, the easier it will be for exchanges to list this particular token. It has very little to do with the fact that it's an HTS token and more to do just with the fact that some of our tokens are still early. Very cool and growing, but still early.
All right, so we got a good response there for CoinMan, and the next one is actually going to go to the man himself, Leemon Baird. Leemon, I'm going to go to you on this next one, and I received this question from a community member. They were actually directing it to Rob Allen because we do an AMA every week, and he does a really good job with it, but I knew I was going to be coming on with you, so I figured I'd throw it to you. He was wondering about the timeline for community nodes. Can you give us an update on this, and how important is this milestone to Hedera?
Yeah, very important. So I can't give specific timelines because there's always the balancing of different features and when they come out and dependencies and everything else, but it is a high priority. We are definitely working on all the pieces that need to happen for that. And I'm excited about it. We know that there's a lot of people in the community that really want to be part of this, and we want you to be part of it, and we want to grow it. Also, community members are on the path to permissionless nodes. We have to expand to community members, then we expand to permissionless nodes. And I'm excited about that as the ultimate goal. And so community nodes will be coming. I can't give you a date. I don't know a date, but we are working hard on making that happen. And then the plan is that eventually we would also work hard on making permissionless nodes happen. That whole sequence of the path to decentralization, we had a video about that a long time ago. This is what we're working on. And I think this is important. And I love the fact that people want to be running nodes. And I'm looking forward to the day when they will be doing so.
Absolutely. And it's important for network performance as well from the standpoint of we are going to need to shard at some point, and having additional nodes is going to be necessary, right?
That's right. So we can only handle 10,000 per second right now. We could actually raise the throttles and go more, but eventually we'll go to a gazillion per second, and we will need shards. And so we consider sharding to be very important. And of course, shards only work if you have nodes to fill up those shards. And so community nodes and then permissionless is very important when we go to sharding.
All right, Zeb. So the man himself, Leemon Baird, addressing a community question there. And it actually dovetails really nice into Brady's blog that he put out this week, which had a lot of really good information. So a couple of things that I picked out from Brady's blog, it was really well done, was first the hosting providers. Now, we know that Hedera doesn't want their nodes all hosted on like AWS or, Google Cloud or something along those lines. Only 2 nodes can be hosted on any one of those providers. And at the top, we have Microsoft Azure, which has 2, and AWS, which has 2. He also broke it down by country and continent, which was really interesting as well. We certainly have an overweight in the United States and by extension, North America. It's going to be interesting as we go to community nodes if they're going to be able to still track this kind of information. And adding some more color to what Leemon was talking about, Leemon wouldn't give a specific date on when community nodes were coming around, but Brady gave a little bit more information saying that community nodes were going to start in 2024. So Zeb, did you catch this blog post and did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think, obviously one of the clearest parts of that was, like you said, this sort of dispersion across different web service providers, which gives us an extra element of security that, for instance, Cardano or other chains don't have when, say, 70% plus of the node infrastructure is on AWS. We don't have that one massive attack vector that other chains have. But beyond that, I think one thing that is interesting that is often used as a bit of FUD against us that was sort of put to sleep was that a fair amount of people have said that as we scale with more nodes, as we go into community nodes, there's going to be an increase in latency. I'm sure there will be a slight increase, but what Brady mentioned there that there was going to be an upgrade sort of plan for the Gossip protocol itself, so that when we do introduce community nodes, the latency isn't going to go up exponentially, and we're going to still be in a very, very quick time to finality. We don't know enough about that yet to really go into details, but I think it's an interesting point to, sort of lower the angst around that, in the meantime.
Yeah, there's no question about that. When they actually put that new Gossip protocol on mainnet at one point, and even though there was some more volatility, the latency dropped down to, or the time to finality dropped down by 2 seconds. So normally we're around 5 seconds right now. It was getting down around 3. And if that's what they're talking about reintroducing, it's going to drop it significantly. And of course, 5 seconds is just fine for almost all applications. So I don't see that being an issue. Also, you have to bring up sharding. We talked about this with Leemon, that I think it's best to optimize each shard based off of the network performance. Have the optimum amount of nodes in each shard to make sure we maintain the best performance, whether that's 50 or 100 or 200 nodes per shard. That's kind of what I would be looking towards. All right, Zep. So the next thing I want to cover is I actually got interviewed by Mike Maloney. We had a fantastic conversation. After you guys are done here, you should certainly go check it out. But there was one part that I wanted to highlight, and it's around Twigital. And the main reason I want to highlight it is because we've been playing around with our assets with Apple Vision Pro. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's going to be covered in this clip, but check out my conversation with Mike.
You mentioned Twigital, and I'd like you to tell us about that a bit more. So
sure.
I found it fascinating.
So Twigital, I left a 20-year career to come in full-time into this space. And one of the things I did was start working with community engagement with the HBAR Foundation. And the other thing, it's very hard to be in this space and not want to build. Hedera also attracts a lot of really sharp people. And one of those people is my partner, Jesse Damrow. He listened very closely to Leemon Baird. And Leemon Baird is the inventor of that Hashgraph algorithm and one of the co-founders of Hedera. And over again, he would say things like, the world will be tokenized. Everything of value in the world will be tokenized. And Jesse looked at that and he's like, we know it's going to be things like securities and we talked about stocks and bonds and everything like that. But Jesse looked at it and he's like, well, how about all the physical things out there? How about everything that's on your display shelves or in museums or our collectibles? How can we tokenize those things, the things that we treasure? And we've had new technologies come out recently that allow you to create these 3D files, these 3D assets. And there's a couple of different ones. There's GLB, and then there's a .usdz file, universal scene description file. And they're these amazing 3D files that you can interact with in digital immersive environments, and you can zoom in on them. You can focus on them. You can spin them around, look at them, all that kind of stuff. And so he figured that was the best way to capture physical objects. So what we set ourselves to doing is creating an application that allows you to create those assets. And right now we're looking at several different technologies, but the initial iteration, the one that we're using right now, you just take a few dozen pictures of an object and it creates one of these 3D assets. And then it mints that into an NFT on the Hedera network. So, and you can add additional.
You could register all of the physical assets that you own, and it's a unique, it's a non-fungible token where it isn't, you can't duplicate it. It's this unique registration of any object that you own. So a car, a piece of art, anything, you take pictures of it from all different angles, and it puts that together into something where you could see, if it was a car, you'd be able to zoom up and see, some collector car, you'd be able to see any bit of rust or a paint chip or anything like that, and be able to have somebody appraise or value that thing based on the NFT, right?
Exactly. So, you could use it as digital receipts. It could fight counterfeiting out there. So I know handbags, right? The leather handbags, they're one thing that get counterfeited all the time, but that leather is like a fingerprint. So if you capture it in this way, and that follows the item through its life cycle, you don't have to worry about counterfeiting anymore. You can just document the physical condition of items for insurance, for posterity. My partner often does it for his kid's art. Right? That belongs in a museum. They bring it home. It's only going to last a few weeks, a few months, or a few years, and then it's going to get destroyed. But if you capture it this way, then you can keep it forever, and you can put it in these digitally immersive environments. Of course, we talked about these are assets, so they can be traded on Web3 marketplaces. It's one of those assets in the column. The one thing that's really getting us exciting right now is just using these for display in the metaverse. We have, of course, Facebook has become Meta. They've dumped tens of billions of dollars into that space. And then we have Apple that's moving into the space right now with their AR, VR goggles. They're not going to come out until next year, but we've found that our assets work perfectly with this. They've put out their SDKs, and again, it's preliminary, but as I said, you can have multiple files. I'll give a quick example. So you have, I went down to one of these karate combat events, and I got one of the gloves signed by two very famous MMA fighters, Bas Rutten and Georges St-Pierre. I also got a picture with those guys holding the glove. It adds authenticity to it. I did an interview with Georges St-Pierre, so I have that video that can all be attached as files to add, again, authenticity to it, to add to the story. And one thing that Hedera is exploring now, or the Hedera community is exploring, is having dynamic NFTs. So you can have those initial files, and what I would like to see is those initial files are immutable. They can't be changed on the NFT, but you can add additional files to it throughout time, certificates of authenticity, additional pictures you get maybe with Georges St-Pierre, or whatever it is, because a lot of times these assets, it's more about the story than the object itself. It's more about, and this allows you to tell that story as that object goes through its life cycle. And right now, again, I'll try to send you a clip. We've interacted with the SDK on Apple Vision Pro, and you can pop up and bring up that asset, and it'll sit there and spin. Now, this is going to get more interesting as we go forward, and in augmented reality, you're going to be able to take that object again and inspect it, and then more information will pop up. We have these Twigital certs that have more information that come along with it. You can look at that in a separate window. And another window, you might have that interview or the pictures, things along those lines. So there are all kinds of things we can do with these, and we feel like with the big pushes that these huge companies are doing, we're in a really good spot.
Wow. While you were saying all of this, it just made me think of a potential use application. I'm wondering if Twigital could actually do this. In just the next few years, the next 3 years or so, actors will become obsolete. You won't need them. Through artificial intelligence, an entire movie will be able to be created. And all of this is happening very, very fast. Could an actor basically put a trademark on themselves, their image and so on, by getting scanned by this thing completely, and then by uploading photos and images of previous films and so on? Could, for instance, a movie producer purchase from Brad Pitt, for instance, the ability to select any age that he's at and have it convert this. He does some different facial expressions and so on, and older movies could be used as a source, but they could pick any age of any actor that is recognizable, that's out there, that helps sell box office. Is that a potential use case for being able to purchase an asset, Brad Pitt, put him in a movie without Brad Pitt ever having to be there?
But him still being able to collect the value. So these USDZ files, the Pixar movies you see, most of the objects are these USDZ files. They're actual objects that have been captured in this way. And that's why we call them assets, because they actually hold true value. Now, all the AI generated imagery, those are generated through the images that are just found on the internet. And we have to find a way to have ownership. So the value of that goes back to the creator, the owner of this. And this is exactly what we're talking about. We want to be able to represent that value in a provable way. And that's what Twigital is all about. All right, Zep, so we're certainly excited, but there's plenty of other news going on in our ecosystem. Something came out of India from the Hashgraph Association. So do you have any information on that?
So the Hashgraph Association have partnered with IDS and are sponsoring the Bharat Blockchain Yatra, which is a tech and developer conference in India. And it's actually backed by the Indian government itself, which is obviously, a massive, massive stamp of approval there. But I think the interesting part about this news, beyond, that the Indian government itself is backing it, is that it really plays into these sort of key high growth areas that, both the Hashgraph Association and the foundation are targeting. Of course, in our council, it's reflected. In India, we have Tata Communications and Wipro. In Asia, we have Nomura, DBS, Shinhan. And then, in Dubai, we've got the recent news with Rakdao and all these amazing projects like Tajuri, both with, crown princes in particular regions. Not only are we in these regions, but we've got the highest of the highest approving it. But the Hashgraph Association itself is clearly going all in on this. We saw that the Hashgraph Association had gone in partnership with Orange, which is one of the biggest mobile telecommunication networks in the world, and I think the biggest in Morocco. And they're doing a $250 million fund there. The interesting part about that is when you sort of research into what Morocco is, what's happening over there, and you see why they're targeting it. So in Morocco, for instance, within the Africa region rather, there is a current fintech boom going on. But Morocco is a bit slower to the table. They haven't quite got into that rhythm yet. The momentum's not quite there, which would suggest it's there and it just needs a bit of push. I mean, when you actually look at Morocco itself, they've got 71% of the populace are unbanked. But there's I think the penetration rate for mobile phones is 137%. So there's 1.37 phones per person, and yet 71% people are unbanked. So there's a clear market there for banking the unbanked who have a mobile phone, just like we saw with Hedera, with YPay and, the Caribbean, just like we saw with the narrative that Cardano tried to fulfill, but, never really did. So there's a clear key focus there in Morocco, but there's the same thing in India. India still, they are one of the fastest growing tech regions in the world. They're clearly one of the tech capitals, one of the emerging. They've got the biggest developer pool in the world. And, if you can go to those regions with, the status of the Indian government and the power of the Hashgraph, and you can go to developers there where, the value of money is slightly reduced, 250K is a huge amount of money there. It gets you a lot further. If you can offer that, which the Hashgraph Association has done, I think you're really going to be attracting the highest caliber of developers as possible. And that, again, is fulfilling the sort of key growth strategy that the Hashgraph Association and the foundation clearly have out there. So great to see these strategies coming into fruition. Great to see those sort of building blocks being put in place, and definitely very excited to see what the developers come out with from that conference in India.
Yeah, we can't be surprised that the Hashgraph Association is hitting all cylinders with Kamal and Stefan and Rob all working with them in the same direction. When you get guys like that working in the same direction, some fireworks are going to happen. Another thing that I wanted to cover this week that I'd like to see come out is there was another blog that came out on the Google Cloud blog. It was around Hashport. Of course, we talk about interoperability all the time, and that's exactly what Hashport is doing. So it was great to see some of Jesse's thoughts, one of the friends of the show. We've had him on a few few times. I talk to them on a regular basis, and they're just doing great work over there. So we were happy to see that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Hashport, critical infrastructure to our DeFi ecosystem, clearly. And they're fulfilling, this interoperability layer that has been the narrative for the last few years or so. The need for different chains to be able to communicate with each other so that rather we're all pushing on our own cylinder to get 2 miles, collectively we can push to get 100 miles. So they're critical infrastructure for that. And to have Google Cloud highlight that is great, because it's them doubling down on our ecosystem again and also marketing our ecosystem. So very, very great to see that sort of mutual relationship there.
Absolutely. So last week we highlighted the success of Shinhan Bank and their proof of concept that they had, and we just had some more success. Now, we heard about this, Rob talked about this in Shark Bites a few months ago, the CBDC pilot that was going on by the central bank in Australia. And we've seen some success come out of that whole pilot, right? So do you have any information on that one?
As we know, the roots of Hedera, the roots of the Hashgraph itself run very, very deeply in Australia. When we actually met the Wes for the first time out in San Diego, he said that when he went to one of the blockchain conferences in Melbourne, I believe, for the first time, Hedera was the talk of the room. Hedera is top of mind to everyone there. And that, of course, is a testament to the work of Rob Allen out. He pioneered the stablecoin with ANZ Bank, which is the third biggest bank in Australia, on Hedera, following their proof of concept on Ethereum. And then now we see the Reserve Bank of Australia, which is the central bank of Australia, working on a central bank digital currency with a fintech building on Hedera. It was the first of its kind in the industry they were going for, which was in the construction sector. And it really, really has sort of blazed the way, I think, for blockchain technology there, so much so that it was picked up by The Australian, which is, one of the leading newspapers out there. So in this newspaper, they actually said, and quote unquote, "Not centralized co-founder Mark Monfort told The Australian that the platform represented the best of the traditional world, as well as the efficiencies of blockchain. When you look on the Blockchain Explorer, a third party can't see the amount. So we also protect the confidentiality, which is where they implemented zero-knowledge proofs, which is, of course, one of the biggest, talking points at the moment. A spokesman for the RBA said the pilot was in its final stages and the findings report will be released in late August, early September. And so crucially there, actually, a pilot is sort of one step ahead of a proof of concept. So not only have we had the proof of concept, but we're now in pilot. So really, really exciting to see that they've seen the value there. And of course, we'll have our findings later in the year.
Yeah, Zep, I mean, as these proof of concept continue to have success, you just know they're eventually going to make it to market. All right, so the next thing that I wanted to cover is some of the Hedera meeting minutes. There were some things that caught community's eye, so I wanted to cover them real quick. So the first thing that was interesting, and this is going to come directly from those meeting minutes, Brett shared that the proof of stake task force was prepared to recommend a change to the staking rewards algorithm. The proposed change would enable a dynamic code-based staking reward model that would automatically and gradually increase or decrease over time in accordance with the amount of coins in account 800, which is funded by donations and transaction fees not funded directly from the council. Currently, the staking rate is fixed at 6.5% until the balance of HBARs in account 800 runs out, at which time the rate would immediately drop to a de minimis rate. The proposed code changes would create a dynamic rate that would react to various parameters, including a threshold balance in account 800, the maximum percent of total HBAR supply that can earn staking rewards, and the maximum staking rate. Discussion ensued regarding the proposed changes. After being moved and seconded, council members approved the development and implementation of the code changes as presented and described herein. The approved code changes are expected to ship in August. Now, Zep, I'm not going to worry about this until we get a fair amount more information on the specifics. I do think it would make sense for them to keep staking rewards once this is implemented. Make sure that the dynamics and those things that can change maintain the staking rewards where they are. Now, when we go into the next bull market and there's more focus on principal appreciation, so the HBAR actually going up in value, it might make sense for those things to change a little bit. But we'll see how that works going forward. But I think we actually got some more information on staking from the HBAR Foundation. Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, so we actually had an announcement yesterday with Staking Rewards. And Staking Rewards is the market leader in Web3 staking and data and research. So I think they have a monthly active user base of 300,000 users. So a huge amount of traffic going to that page. And for a long time, one of the greatest incentives for people joining Web3 or becoming associated with a network has been this sort of staking model. They want to know that their sort of HBARs are doing work whilst they're asleep. It's knowing that your HBAR, your money is doing something whilst you're not. And so to have that exposure is clearly doing something. I mean, the latest data published from staking rewards was that we've had a sort of over a 400% increase in stakers since that announcement. You can look at it from a positive perspective in that that's a huge amount of awareness to our ecosystem. It's a huge amount of new people hopefully owning HBAR and then moving into our other services like DeFi, et cetera, et cetera. But on the other side, that means we probably are burning through the staking rewards a bit faster. But personally, I think having that greater awareness is crucial. I think, having more active users in the community is crucial. And I think the network effects of having those eyes in will hopefully boost our other services, have more people in the ecosystem, more developers, so on and so forth. So for me, it's more of a long-term positive, but I understand when some people might feel in the short term that it's not the best thing. But we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, again, let's wait for some more information. So there was a second thing that I wanted to cover as well in those meeting minutes. So board members Tasker and Monique explained that the board's initial allotment of 10.7 billion HBAR for ecosystem development is fully allocated towards existing commitments, including grants to the HBAR Foundation, the Hashgraph Association, and the DLT Science Foundation. For that reason, the board is requesting an additional 1 billion HBAR in order to further advance ecosystem development and open source initiatives. One director expressed opposition to the request on the grounds that such allocation requests should provide more detail to the council members on expected uses of the coins. Council members discussed and request the board's expected use of such additional allocation. Board members confirmed that there's no exigent or pressing circumstances underlying the request. Following the discussion, the board agreed to withdraw its proposal and present a more detailed proposal at the July council meeting with more information on the expected use of such additional ecosystem allocation. So Zeb, the thing that struck me on this is it's not just a blank check, right? The council members are actually doing what they're supposed to do and governing the use of the treasury. Did you have any thoughts on this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's perfectly valid. What concern to have. You want to know where these HBARs are going because there's only a finite amount. We know that to boost the ecosystem growth, every chain does this, but we want to know that they're going to the most effective causes possible. So to have that extra transparency there, or at least at the very early stage, proving where that money is going to be going, I think is of vital importance. So a very valid concern, of course.
And we're going to shift gears here a little bit into infrastructure that's being built in our space. And of course, this is critical for all the builders that are working in our space. The first thing that I wanted to touch on is some of the work that Arkhia is doing with some of the more high-profile builders. Can you cover that?
Yeah, so Arkhia, of course, is one of our most robust mirror node services. They're the point between querying data on the Hashgraph and the application itself, i.e., of vital importance for a functioning dApp on Hedera. And, they've been doing great work throughout our ecosystem. They're one of the core mirror node services out there. And to see them linking up with Fresh Supply Co., of course, who have the heritage of MasterCard, MasterCard provenance, is obviously a massive bullish indicator from FSCO and Arkhia that there's two massive projects, both who are robust enough to support each other. And then, of course, alongside that, they integrated with Earthlings, which is really exciting to see. We're very excited for Earthlings as one of our first metaverse gaming projects. And to know that they're also getting that critical infrastructure is very important.
Yeah, no question about that. And we actually have a new entrant into the infrastructure space that's very competent and they know what they're doing, and that's Validation Cloud. And I caught up with their CTO, Andrew, who gave us some really good insights on what they're building. So check it out. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andrew, can you go over what services Validation Cloud offers developers within the Hedera ecosystem and why these kinds of tools are important?
Absolutely. So first, Validation Cloud is a Web3 infrastructure company that provides node as a service for developers, enterprises, for many of the top ecosystems, including Hedera. And there's three core pillars of the platform. First, performance. Second, resilience, and third, compliance. So performance, we're proud to have consistently ranked number one on compare nodes as the fastest, most performant way to connect into blockchain ecosystems. Number one globally, but also number one across many of the important jurisdictions for many Web3 users, North America, Europe, and Asia. On top of that, we facilitate high throughput, so global scale, low latency, but also billions of calls through the API per user, which unlocks next generation applications that can scale with our managed service. On the resilience side, not only high uptime, but we've implemented layers of self-healing, global smart routing to maintain your connectivity to Web3 with just a simple URL in your application. And on the compliance side, we've worked hard as a company to strive for SOC 2 compliance, which is really the Web 2 gold standard for infrastructure. All of this is really important for the ecosystem because maintaining your nodes, also doing it in a way that is performant, that is secure, that is compliant, is a really difficult, really expensive proposition for Web3 teams. And so what our platform does is really allows you to get started, start building, and not have to worry about maintaining the infrastructure, just having a great service that you can scale your company on. And just one more point here is that there's really two core services that we offer for Hedera on the node side. One is mirror nodes, so getting access to historical information, and then the other is the JSON RPC relay.
I know both of those are critical for our builders. So for those that are watching that aren't developers, can you give us some examples of how developers could leverage your tooling to enable or enhance specific use cases?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you want to use a mirror node service. What that allows you to do is gain access to historical information, transactions on the blockchain. What you can do with that is a number of things. You could perform transaction analytics. You could audit your historical transactions. Let's say if you were a professional services firm, you can also monitor for event-driven workflows. That could be if you're running a DeFi application or trading. You may be interested in looking for those events to trigger some actions that you take, or look at your historical performance in terms of your activity. On the JSON RPC relay side, really starts to get EVM-like compatibility on top of Hedera. So you can interact with the protocol in a similar way you could expect on top of some other EVM-based chains. And that can bring in also tooling into the ecosystem. For example, wallet support like MetaMask, which begins to be possible on top of Hedera with this functionality.
Fantastic. That's certainly important stuff. So how can developers that are interested in using your services, how can they get access?
Sure. So first, you can go to validationcloud.io and select Launch App. And it's a really easy sign up process and to get started. So after you sign up, which is very quick and easy, you select Hedera, and you can basically name your API key, select testnet or mainnet, and then we have two tier options. So there's a free tier and a scale tier. So free is really for developers just to get started. We go by a compute unit model, which weights your request depending on how heavy it is. We give you 50 million compute units for free. You don't need a credit card on the free tier. And you can use that with as much throughput as you want, up to 50 million. For more sophisticated users, there is the scale plan, which is unlimited compute units in a pay-as-you-go model. And it's really interesting, very developer enterprise friendly, that there's actually economies of scale for your usage. So the marginal cost of your requests or compute units actually declines as you use more of the API. So we're incentivizing you to use more and generate more activity on chain. We do also have a third category, which is more of an enterprise tier. If you have bespoke needs, you can always engage us directly, and we can help you out with your unique needs in the ecosystem.
So is there anything else you'd like to pass on to the Hedera community that they might find useful?
Yeah, so to the Hedera community, whether you're just starting to build or you're an already established member of the ecosystem, our platform can enhance your project, and you can sign up for an account directly or contact the Validation Cloud team through our website, as I mentioned, at validationcloud.io. And you can also check out more on our website, our blogs, which we often put out to enhance, and complement the platform in terms of what you can do and build on top of our infrastructure. And so look out for that. Look out for our social media. And appreciate you having me on the show today. And we look forward to engaging more and more of the community.
Well, it's my pleasure, Andrew. Thank you so much for swinging by and telling us about Validation Cloud.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon.
So, Zep, it was great catching up with Andrew, and I think they're going to do some really great things for builders in our space. There's another infrastructure provider in our space, and that's Headstarter. And not only do they provide great infrastructure for our builders, but they also are great representatives. Can you cover what they did down in Manila?
Yeah, so it was great to see the Headstarter team out in Manila, in the Philippines, where we know within that sort of Southeastern Asian region, there's a big demand for Web3 gaming, at least historically. And so out there, they brought Astronova, they had Earthlings, Legends of the Past, and also Web23. And the three clear gaming ones there are Astronova, Earthlings, Legends of the Past. So it's really, I think, great to have gaming projects on Hedera critically at a critical region for Web3 gaming, but also to see the amount of people that were actually at their stall. They had an amazing turnout there. They looked absolutely packed. They had a beautiful stall. And, who better to be representing us than Tudor and the Headstarter team? They know our ecosystem. They know our technology in and out, back to front. So, yeah, excited to see them out there and really great to have them supporting other builders in our community.
Yeah, I love the Headstarter team. They're just really good people, and they're representing us well. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get into some network analysis. So over the past 24 hours, we've had 70 million transactions. There has been some volatility over the past 24 hours, but at the time of recording, we're back up over 1,300 transactions per second. Time to consensus is still just about 5 seconds. We've had almost 60,000 accounts created over the past week, which continues our climb over 3 million total accounts. And taking a look at our fungible tokens, we have Wrapped HBAR at the top, Dovu, USDC, XSauce, and HeliSwap showing that our DeFi ecosystem is strong. We have Energy Trade Token. Of course, they have a lot of transactions because they have an active faucet. And I also see in the top 10 a couple of our meme coins. We have Zero and Bull Bar. So, Zep, it's fun to see these meme coins go at it. What are your thoughts around this meme coin battle royale we have in our ecosystem?
Yeah, I'm all for it. I've got no qualms with any of the teams. I think Sourcinu is taking its approach. It's doing the very, I think, classic meme coin algorithm, sort of the algorithm success, and I think it's looking great. They seem to be doing well on the sort of DEX tools equivalent that we have in the community by hash chats. And then you've also got the Bull Bar, which is, of course, a lot of the community members are part of that, and they're doing it their own way. I don't think there's any right way. I think it's a bit of fun. It gets new eyes in the ecosystem, and I don't see any reason for conflict whatsoever there. You've got Zero as well, who've been around promising Zero, which is also great. And I think, there's just a lot of them out there. I'm not going to go all in on them. I don't know enough about the projects. I don't think anyone really does. They're meme coins. It's just a bit of fun. I think they should be looked at that way. I'm not going to put the family farm on the meme coin, but I might put a tiny bit in there and just, have a bit of fun. So for me, not financial advice, but a bit of fun, a bit of entertainment in the ecosystem. And, I'm not picking any sides. I'm just sort of happily spectating.
Yep. Like you said, it's all in good fun. And moving down to our non-fungible tokens, I see that World Cup Qatar is in the top spot, which is really impressive. That's over the past week. And we also see Road Code in the top 10. So both of those are going to be community engagement tokens. I see Cybercrime's Main Access. I see Earthlings in the top 10. We also have Dead Pixels and Hangry Barboons. So Zep, do you have any thoughts on what you see coming out of our NFT ecosystem as of late?
Yeah, it's really cool, I think, to see Reality Plus, the development team behind both Play OTZ, which is the FIFA licensed World Cup football game on Hedera, as well as Road Coach. They're both the masterminds of Reality Plus. The teams behind them is Reality Plus. So great to see that sort of continued engagement with our ecosystem from them, seeing the value. And I think now it's time for us to see the value of those projects reflected in the network metrics, which is what we're seeing now. Beyond that, beyond the great teams that you've just mentioned, Zeus Market also have now onboarded a new developer team to the platform. For so long, it was literally a one-man army. This guy behind it, he's just been doing everything that one man can do. There's only so much one man can do. He got us into a very good position with Zeus. I think now it's time to take that to the next level with this reinforced developer team. So great to see them expanding there. And, hopefully that'll mean that they can update and upgrade where they need to and, really bring that momentum back into the scene.
I've been talking with the Zeus team and they're much more engaged. Of course, like you said, there was only one man before. They have a lot more resources now, and I think they're going to make their mark for sure. All right, so with that all out of the way, we'll go ahead and get into some DeFi. Looking at DeFi Llama, not including stated liquid staking, total value locked on the Hedera network is just over $26 million. $22 million of that is on SaucerSwap, $3.5 million on HeliSwap, and Pangolin has dropped further to $750,000. Looking at the SaucerSwap farming rewards, we have 9% on HBAR HBAR-X, 30% on HBAR Sauce, 35% on HBAR USDC, and 41% on HBAR Karate. On HeliSwap, we have 86% on HBAR and their native token Heli, 48% on HBAR Karate, and 32% on HBAR USDC. Moving on to the crypto and HBAR markets, the crypto market has generally been down this week, with Bitcoin down 1.5% over the past week and up 0.5% this past day. At the time of recording, HBAR is down over 6% on the week and up 1.5% over the past 24 hours to about 5.2 cents. The next half year may offer some opportunities depending on the broader markets, but I'm still pretty bullish in the medium term, which I generally consider between 1 to 3 years. Taking a look at the chart, 5 cents is the next area of support if we continue to move down, and 5.6 cents is where I'd expect some resistance. All right, Zep, that's pretty much all we have. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, I mean, last week we had that sort of theme of, Hedera as the home of the next generation of finance. And we saw that again this week. Last week we had Shinhan Bank and the biggest financial institution in Taiwan. This week we have the Central Bank of Australia. What more could you ask for? Both of them pilots, which is again slightly beyond a proof of concept. So I think, when that regulatory green flag comes, then we'll really be able to see those kind of endeavors turn up on the mainnet. But, beyond that, we saw, the Indian government, now part of our ecosystem via tenuous one, but via backing the Hashgraph Association through their sponsorship of one of the tech conferences out there with that hackathon as well. We saw Brady come out telling us how Hedera's roadmap to decentralization is still in full force. Tweaks are going to be made to the gossip algorithm to make sure that we still remain just as efficient there, if not hopefully more in the future. So a lot of good stuff to chew on there. And yeah, next week I'm sure we'll hear even more, but another good packed week for Hedera there.
Yeah, a lot to be excited about. I do want to remind everybody that next week on the 4th of August, I'm going to be posting that exclusive interview with Manson Leemon. There's another one that's coming out the following week with the CEO of the HBAR Foundation, Shane Higdon, and the CSO, Elaine. They have some great insights as well. I want to tell everybody to go check out that interview that I did with Mike Maloney. There's a lot of good information in that one. And then also Gossip About Gossip has been hitting on all cylinders as well. And the latest one that just came out this morning is from Zenny. So check that one out as well. That's all we have. We'll see you in a few weeks.